Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of our Pondside, well, aka Fireside, Pondside Chats. We've got an amazing guest today. In case you missed hello, my name is Steve Kuchin, also sometimes known as DeveloperSteve. Well, just sometimes it's my legal middle name. Anyway, hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us. Really looking forward to geeking out. The last Pondside Chats we had was amazing, so no pressure to our upcoming guest. But if you did want to catch the last episode, let me grab the button. Oh, I had this ready in pre-prod. There it is there. So if you want to catch the last episode with the amazing Dapper Dan, who, I mean, we had so much fun geeking out. I hope for those joining us again, I hope people went and watched Pirates of Silicon Valley, because it's literally my all-time favorite movie. So anyway, if you haven't, totally recommend it. I don't know where it's streaming, but I'm sure you're all tech folk. I'm sure you can find it. But yeah, if you wanted to catch that interview, lilypad.team/pond, pond1. This will be pond 2, spoilers, once we've finished. Anyway, and today's guest is actually was dobbed in by Dan at the end of the last show. So no pressure. And then there was some twittering backwards and forwards. Anyway, for those that were following along at home. But really excited to be joined by the amazing Ida Tweets, or Ida from Ida Tweets. A bit of an intro. Ida is a standout voice in the Web3 space, known for creating insightful and educational content. Ida helps people build in the decentralized world by helping break things down into, well, I'm going to say bite-sized chunks, but I think that's a pun, maybe. Whether guiding others through the process of launching a dApp or diving into the intricacies of blockchain, which we're all very familiar with and, well, use on a microsecondly basis even. Ada has a remarkable ability to break down the complex concepts into clear, actionable insights, which is always like my favorite thing. You take that really, really complex thing and just like break it so that everyone can understand it and everyone can build, and well, as a community, we all grow. Beyond content creation, Ada has been an active force at numerous hackathons. Oh, who doesn't love a good hackathon? Collaborating with fellow innovators to advance what's possible and and conquering what's not, with using the power of decentralization. So anyway, we're amazingly thrilled to hear more about Ada's journey as a developer, as a tech person, as a developing tech person in the world of Web3 and crypto and blockchain and all the things amazing and decentralization. And let's give a warm welcome to Ada. I don't know why I fumbled that. To Ada, woo! This is where the applause track comes in. Hello and welcome.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for having me. That was a very good intro. I don't know if I will be able to live up to Dan's pod, but I hope we can have like a nice conversation too.
That sounds great. Always happy to geek out. And for those playing along at home, we do have questions already loaded. However, if you wanted to add to those questions, please drop the questions. Actually, it's in chat now. I'm going to bring it up on screen. No pressure. If anyone does have any questions, comments, or emojis, please drop them into the chat as we go, whether you're watching or listening on, watching on LinkedIn or YouTube, or listening on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Please, bring in those questions, because we're keen to have them. But failing that, let's kick things off. First question, where to begin? I'm going to start with one of my all-time favorites. Is what was your first computer?
So I get asked like sometimes like what was your first like computer, or like what were you doing growing up? And honestly, I was not a tech person at all when I was growing up. I think like it started after 18. My first computer, we had like one in the house. I think it was one of those big Dells. Um I don't remember the model, but like we had like one in the living room, and like everyone had like certain hours which they can use it. Um, but the computer which I think had the most impact on me was afterwards when I got my first like Sony Vaio Funny. So then that's when I was like, oh, like these are actually like cool. Like it can do more stuff. Like it's easy to carry around. But growing up, I was really not at all like a tech person.
Oh, see, I should have a follow-up question for you. Actually, I am. I just created it. But um, first code editor. I'm curious of this because I like mine was oh, what was that? No, it's forgotten it. Oh, Notepad. Well, I mean, Notepad's the original. You'd pull things apart and have a look at the HTML and be like, oh, my key. But yeah, what was your first code editor on that computer?
I think it was Eclipse. So that was the first which I
Uh,
used. And yeah, that was my first editor. And like first coding language was also Java. So that was kind of like the entry into like coding.
Nice. Yeah, Java is a whole other language. Respect to them and hello to the anyone that does Java. It's very formidable, very solid language on its own. I have a love-hate with it. It's fun. What sparked your initial interest in blockchain and Web3 in particular? Like, how did you? I know you had some early beginnings in the Web2 space, but how did you? What first initially caught your eye with Web3 and its amazing move into decentralizing the bottlenecks?
Yeah, for sure. I can try my best to answer. Maybe it would be good to give like a bit of background of what I was doing before as well, and
Mhm.
what I'm doing now. So right now, I've been in the Web3 space for almost 2.5, 3 years. I'm working at Hyperlane as a developer advocate, and I know we'll get into the details of like interoperability. But my initial steps into blockchain was I was working in the networking space. I was doing uh, it was more, it wasn't really like coding. It was more like making network scripts, like make them work. And I'd been doing that for 2, 3 years. We were creating like large network diagrams for different companies. It was part of the technical sales team, and I was working at Cisco at the time. And then I kind of got interested more around like how large systems work. And then I had moved back to Turkey. It was COVID. Just during COVID, I was living in Amsterdam. Then I moved back to Turkey, a lot of harsh lockdowns. And then I started to kind of see a lot of like exchange, like centralized exchange advertisements in like the metro or like all the places where I was like, where, well, you can go out a lot, but like when you did, you would definitely see them. So I was like, okay, like this is interesting. And it was actually also the time when I was learning more about AWS development, like building my own servers, like how they run, because we were using like Docker and Kubernetes a lot. So I was like, okay, like maybe we can take this to a next level. So it was kind of at the same time where I started to like learn about blockchain, and it's like, okay, this is interesting. But my initial like entry to blockchain was not through the tech, to be honest. It was more, okay, like there's all these coins, like why are there so many coins? So like I created like my first exchange account, and I'm like, I only thought there was like this Bitcoin and Ethereum, but then there's like a lot of coins listed there. The prices change daily. I'm like, how does this even work? So I think my first entry was when I decided to like buy a little and be like, okay, like this is how coins work. And then it was probably like the worst possible time because Ethereum was at like 4,000. So it was definitely not a time where you want to be investing. And I don't think I have a good track record of investing anyways. But it really got my interest. So I'm like, okay, like why are there so many coins? Like, why is this? How does this work? What is this NFT thing? So that's when um, interestingly, it was also the same time where I was like working to understand like more microservices and how they work together. And I thought the architecture was kind of similar, that you had like all these different components where you can connect them, like basically like an API into blockchain to get some data which you don't want to be changed, instead of like using a centralized identity system, for example. So it was quite interesting. After like my initial like intro via centralized exchanges, I started to like learn more. Um, I watched like Nader's very popular video on YouTube. That was like one of the first things which got me to build something on the blockchain. It was like, I think, deploying your first smart contract, or maybe even creating like an NFT marketplace. I don't remember exactly, but I got that. And then I saw like a lot of different content from like Patrick and Austin, and it was like, oh, okay, like you can actually like build stuff. And yeah, that's kind of how I got interested, after like first of all trying, failing on the investment side, but then it just really matched my interest. I honestly did not even know that the blockchain world was something like this. It sounded more like a speculation from afar, so I never really was interested until like I decided to dive deeper and try some things myself.
Amazing. You know what? As a dev, the breaking things is always my favorite bit, only because once I break something, I can work out how to put it back together, and then I know how it works. So break everything, and then like see what's still working. I say anyway. The one thing you touched on there is you've been involved with both like technical, like fairly technical, like delving down and sort of understanding the fundamentals and like how everything sort of fits together and runs and operates, etc. I love that you're talking about Kubernetes too. We could talk for hours about that one, but we weren't on this one. But the alongside that though, you've also been quite prominent or worked quite closely with some of the different community groups in particularly in the Web3 group. But how do you balance? Because obviously, with the particularly with a lot of the community engagement stuff, like there's the technical side of like contributing and like adding to docs. Shout out to anyone doing Hacktoberfest at the moment too, by the way, which we are in our repos. If anyone wants to go check that out. Quick side note. But what's how do you balance between like the technical side, because I know there's times like where as a dev I want to do all the technical things, but then there's also like the sharing with community, building videos, like geeking out with different community folks. How do you balance those two aspects of engagement?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it kind of sparks like the questions around like, there's so many debate around DevRel and developer advocacy. What do you do? Like, do you like talk to people or do you like write code? So in my mind, like what I like to do is I really like the education side of things. I feel like this has been something where I spend a lot of time in and like try to get better every time. I think like other people are better at other aspects, but for me, that's the education, and I want to stick to what I'm doing the best. And that's like learning about a technology and breaking it down. So of course, like to learn, I have to do it myself because if I don't do it myself, I will not like understand it clearly. But then I like once I find like an idea which is really cool and I see that it's underrepresented, I definitely want to do more of the community side of things. So I think like it works in a way where you have to like be technical, deep dive, but then you also have to like after doing that piece, like it's not about getting like into the details and like adding a small integration, for example, but it's more around like going ahead and like talking about this in like different places. Cause that's kind of one of the main issues which I felt like all my like previously my jobs, my tech life where I was working as a developer and we were building all these complex tools where you spend like days and nights working on them, but then no one uses them because no one knows that they exist. And I'm like,
Mm.
well, I wish I was like sleeping instead of working on this if no one's going to use it anyway. So that's kind of been my like all um, concern throughout, like not concern, but kind of like a burning point where I'm like, I really want to do this part because it doesn't make sense to like work on all this, but then no one explains it clearly. And I feel like when most people explain it, especially I felt this a lot when I was studying computer science or looking into like some research or like listening to others, is that especially engineers like to overcomplicate things. So even though like so I studied computer engineering too. I know like I try my best to like make it simpler to anyone to understand because in each of my lesson I was like, okay, when you actually like break it down, it's not that hard that I was listening when this person explained. So for me, it's more around like, I will do the thing, I will make sure that I know like all the aspects, I will make the integrations, I will make the code that's working, and then I will go ahead and advertise it in many other places and create the educational content. But that's really like has been my focus and I intend to keep it that way for a while, if that makes sense.
No, it does, and I love hearing that just because, like, as you know, I've spent a number of years in DevRel too, and just having people that can get hands on with the code that they're taking out, be able to geek out with it on a whole other level, like that is invaluable. Like yeah, it's so important. I think with particularly when you're building out content. Um, Actually, on that note, what have you found to be the most rewarding moments when it comes to building out those education content pieces? Like, particularly, I'm sort of looking at some of the initiatives that you've worked on, like the Builder Show and Web 2 to Web 3 series, which I found great, by the way. What's been the most rewarding thing with putting that sort of educational content together?
I appreciate that you like the videos too. It was a very nice collaboration. But the best thing is when you meet someone or when some like on Twitter, it happens a lot too. Like someone is like, oh, like I deployed my first contract, or now I'm interested in blockchain. Like getting those feedbacks from the people which actually like watch your product and they're like, wow, like this actually got me interested, and now I'm going to build like get into the blockchain sector or like write my first code or like focus on this area, like learn more about ZK proofs, for example. I think that is the most rewarding side. And there's really like no other like feedback loop which I had in my like career that's as satisfying as like seeing someone get into like dive deeper into a topic because of something that you did. Like I think that's just like really powerful. And yeah, the best like feedback which you can get. And that's that's kind of how I see it.
Amazing. Yeah, I really love that. Um, Speaking of interoperability, oh, I can't even say it. Interoperability. I still can't say it. Anyway, if I say it 3 times, Beetlejuice appears, right? It's it seems to be at the moment a key focus on in some of the work you're doing, or some of the shift in the work you're doing. Did you want to talk a bit more about that? And actually, let's go with that one first. Then I have a follow-up. I actually have many follow-up questions. But anyway, did you want to tell us a little bit more about interoperability and some of the work you're now doing on that?
Yeah, for sure. So when I first started blockchain, like well, like the blockchain world, two and a half, like 3 years ago, I think the main question I had was like, okay, like which chain do we build on? Like, or honestly, like most people start with like Ethereum or Solana. I feel like depends on the content you get. Well, before it wasn't Solana that much, but now I feel like you have two paths. Like you enter through these big layer ones. And then you start like deploying your app, and then you're like, okay, like if you're in the Ethereum world, you're like, okay, well, this is like very high cost and really slow. Like, let me explore like what these scaling solutions, the layer two solutions or rollups kind of work with. So then you're like, okay, instead of like deploying to Ethereum, I'll deploy to like Base. I'll go to like Arbitrum, or I'll go to like these other networks. And I used to ask, I'm like, okay, like what network are you building on? Like, what is like your, where are you going to build your app? But then like soon after, like once you spend enough time and once you kind of learn about like how the technologies work, I think it's clear that there's going to be like multiple different environments. It's not going to be a one size fits all, but there's going to be like all these different chains. And so then instead of like having your app on one chain and like limiting it to those users over there, it just makes so much more sense to like open up and like connect to other chains, because then the users are there, the liquidity is there, like all your data is there. So then you kind of want to transfer to like where your app is. And that's when I started like research more and understand more about the interoperability landscape. And I recently started working at Hyperlane, and we're building a permissionless interoperability layer. Just as anyone can deploy like a smart contract on Ethereum, with Hyperlane, you can just like spin up your rollup and then connect it to the other ecosystem. So you can deploy your own contract, which gives you access like a like kind of like an entry portal to other ecosystems, which I think is like a very, very powerful concept, because yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me to see like there's going to be a one solution wins all, and
Mm.
having like a world where multiple solutions will exist. I think it's like the basis to like connect them all together. And yeah, interoperability is a hard word to say now that we said it too many times. But that's kind of my segue into it, and why I think it's one of the most powerful things right now.
No, it's amazing. Yeah, it's one of those words you like 3 times fast and you still not gonna be right. No, that was amazing. I guess another way to look at that is well, it kind of brings that one chain to rule them all. But in the darkness, bind them. You can use that in a presentation. So yeah, anyway, so the concept of modular blockchains is gaining traction. Can you share your thoughts on their potential to transform existing blockchain infrastructures and how to empower developers to build more efficiently? I think in particular, with a sort of lens on community and like how they can sort of help add to this as well. I think would be good as well. Only in that I know a lot of these chains have a lot of really strong ecosystems and communities built around them. So I guess to add to that, just to make the question even more complex, was yeah, how important or what sort of role do you see like ecosystems and community playing in that as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think I've been writing about modular blockchains for over a year now as well. And it's definitely like I don't like to use the I think like there's a lot of buzzwords in the space, so I feel like it's basically yeah, we can say modular blockchains, but I think it's about like separating the blockchain tasks to like different functions which kind of take it on. And yeah, I think it's very powerful because we've run into a lot of scalability issues with the layer ones, or like when you look at the other side, there's definitely like a trade-off you need to make, right? Like with speed or like cost, or like everything comes with a trade-off with itself. So I
Mm,
feel like it makes much more sense to have like specialized functions, like actually doing that. So like when you talk about data availability, for example, if there's like a specialized layer which focuses on that, I think that makes a lot more sense. And essentially like you just have like this one thing which does one thing really good and connects to the other pieces. So that's kind of how I see the system coming together. And I also think like on another note that interoperability should be part of the stack because what means with modular blockchains is that or like the app chains or like having multiple chains is that you can also like spin up your own chain really easily. So like I can go over here and I can open like a roll up as a solution website. I can go to Caldera today and I can create my own roll up in just or app chain in just a few seconds. But when I have that, that's kind of its own island. So yes, like you have your own chain, but as you said, like where are the users? Where is the people building on it,
mm,
or the liquidity, right? Like you just have it, but it's on its own, like in another closed system. And that's where I think it's important to connect them together. So I do feel like it's it's gaining a lot of traction since like the last few years, and I'm interested to see like how it moves forward. It's a lot easier now. Like I when I first started, I would have never thought about like a roll up as a solution service where you can just deploy your roll up in a few seconds. But now it's becoming like actually a reality. And to answer the second point of your question, where community plays part is um, community is an interesting one. When like ever since I entered the blockchain ecosystem, it's kind of interesting. Like, yes, you have like a really good developer community, but you also like there's also like a lot of communities which are not really like focused on maybe like creating some value, but more around like speculation, which I guess is
mm.
fine. Like I'm not kind of against it. When you build like these permissionless systems, like of course like that comes like you it makes no sense to like Nader had a video the other day on meme coins, and it just resonated so much to me because it's like, you know, like you build a system and then you're like, why are people doing these things? So it just doesn't make sense. Like everyone can do what they want when you build open permissionless systems. But the way I see community fit in is I think it's very important to have like to attract the developers to build on new systems because otherwise like they just like if no one builds on the system you create, I don't see where the value comes. Like when you look at AWS today, like when you thought about it like in the beginning, like 12 years ago, you would have never thought that AWS would gain traction. But the efforts they made on the community, like the educational product, the partners, like it just created like a whole new ecosystem of people building on cloud solutions. So I think it's kind of similar in the sense that you need to attract. I don't think it's fair, like it makes sense to be religious on like some sort of like I'm this L1 person. I don't think that's like a fair way to like a smart way to look at it more so. But I do think it's important to like attract people, and like once you attract more people, it kind of makes that effect where more people come, and then you can actually get like smart people interested, or like the blockchain clubs I think are a good example, right? Like they start somewhere and then they make advocacy for the same technology. So you'd see them at like different conferences, let it be like web 2 or web 3 conferences, and then it kind of like is like, okay, like so this is this Ethereum thing. Like I just got like learned about it through here. So I think that's kind of how I see community. I don't see it as like being you know, following like a certain chain, but more so like being in the same ecosystem and building together. So then the technology works in the end. Because I don't like the saying that, you know, you build something and people come. It's more like you build like you also build the community. Like it just doesn't come. Like if you just are grumpy and like don't share what you're building or like no one comes, I think that just sits there and it has no effect to like the general like world or evolution of technology.
So I yeah, no, I love that. And I think the first thing that came to mind for me was yeah, I mean it's like adding interoperability. Oh, I said it. To your community so that they're interoperable. Oh, I said it again. Between the different chains. Which I mean just like you said, it makes them more well, almost makes their skills and abilities modular to some degree. So being able to move it across and well, I mean one thing you build something for one, you can build it for another and another and another and another and yeah, that's amazing. If you've just joined us, hello, I'm Steve Kuchum and joined here from Lilypad. I'm joined here today by the amazing Ada from Ada Tweets. If you've got a question, please drop it into the chat. We're doing a Pondside Chat, which is kind of like a fireside chat, only more Lilypadian. Oh, there we go. I got to use Lilypadian in this episode. um, One question I did have, what do you think? You've interacted with or worked pretty close with a number of different communities through the Web3 space, well, and Web2 as well. I'm just going to say the tech space because we're all one big fan. Through the tech space, what do you think some elements that makes for a really good, healthy, interactive community? Like, what do you think are some traits that you like to see around knowledge sharing and just people coming together with the common goal of just building out really good software and really good communities?
Yeah, that's a nice question. So, I think so the way I see it is I think you need to give like the community like if you're working towards building a community, you need to have like all the resources which help people like actually be adopted. Like I feel like um there should be like a general like a purpose to be there together or like a common goal, which can be to like learn about blockchain technologies, right? Like that's or like there has to be like something that people are doing together and want to advance. Like there should be like a common goal. Like what we're doing at Build Guild, for example, we're building like all the educational all the tools where people can actually come and can learn about the technologies, and then they stay connected. So like if you have, um, we create all these like educational resources afterwards, more like kind of chats, like builder chats or like different resources which they can kind of refer to afterwards and stay connected as well. Um, like the way I see it is if you're building a community once and then if you push like five things at the same day and then don't do anything for a year, I don't think that's like a sustainable like that kind of just fades away. I think you need to be engaging. You need to like constantly produce something. Like that like I feel like DevRels get a lot of hate for like constantly being online, but I think that's actually like quite important to like be active and show up every day. Like showing up under every day is like a very underrated thing to do. And like if you're there every day, if you're like building together, if you're giving encouragement, that's kind of how I see you building a good community. And that's what we try to do with like what we're pushing, like the builder chats or like the different speed on Ethereum updates, like going to live events, like being there physically to meet the people who are using your technology, who are building with you to, to say hi and not just to say hi, but to be like, okay, what do you think is missing? Like if you build that trust,
Mhm.
then the people who are part of your community will be able to like give you good feedback, like not just be like, oh, like this is cool, but instead, I think like if you added like a new challenge which focuses around like building like a poly market, like a prediction market, that would make sense. Is some kind of feedback which you can get once you have like that good connection. And yeah, so the way I see it is it's really important to be consistent because otherwise it's not a community, it's just like an announcement board. And to show up every day to kind of build resources which are actually useful. And the difference between the communities, I feel like, especially in Web 2, it was more around teaching the technology. In Web 3, I think it's all about like not just teaching the technology, but showing that it's um, like I say I spend most of my time convincing people that blockchain is not a bad thing. So it's more around like kind of debunking these myths and like being like, okay, like this is actually the case, and here is exactly where you can find this information. Not just me saying, oh, like the Web3 is gonna rule the world, but actually like being concrete and like giving stuff which resonate with people. And that's kind of the way I see those communities difference. Like I feel in Web2, like people are already like building very cool stuff and require like more educational resources. In Web3, it's additionally like convincing people to make that first step. So that's kind of the difference.
Amazing. I grew up in Web 2, so one thing I would say is please don't let us have another email for that fiasco, because right now there are three companies that control email everywhere. So, and if they say your server's not good, like it's never going to be good. Anyway, no, I totally agree, and I am looking forward to the day when the decentralization does rule the world. Please, can we have that now? Actually, one thing you did touch on there, I got a question around, which is you have been part of several DAOs, including Developer DAO and Biddle Guild. I can't say it. You said it before. Anyway, that one.
Diddle diddle.
What?
It's
That's
hard.
oh, the L's.
You
The L's
switch
always throw me
the
off.
L and the D. Yeah, the
Yeah.
L's and the D's.
What role do you see those playing in the future of Web3 and fostering that innovation and that community growth?
Yeah, so I will touch on both of them because I think they both had like a huge impact and continue to on my career path. So when I first started Web3, I saw like Nader's video, I watched that, and then I started following him on Twitter. And then one day he put out a tweet like, "Hey, like I'm starting this developer DAO. Like all you need to do is go and like mint this NFT." And at the time, it was through Etherscan, so there was not also like a proper website to mint it. So you would actually go to the contract and you had to add like your address. So it wasn't like a nice interface. It was quite a like bad user experience, and I had no idea how to do it. But then like someone like lay out the steps, so I did it and I got in. And I think what I saw over there was that so I was starting to learn about this new technology called Ethereum, and I tried to talk to my friends in real life, but they were like, "No, guy, I don't know what this is." Uh, but then met like a whole bunch of online people trying to learn the same thing as me, and that was kind of like relieving. And I understood like where to find the resources. They're like, "Hey, like this is like a cool article which you can read to," and then I like it's just very comforting to see like other people like having the same challenges that you or like working on the same like stuff as you do. It makes your life so much easier because you get access to like all the resources, you can ask questions. Um, you're kind of yeah, like along the like mentally comforting aspects, it just gives you like access to all this information. And then, yeah, it just got me more and more interested, and I don't think I've left since. And then that was kind of my start into the developer communities. Um, so once I started to be more active, like do more stuff, I also learned about Build Guild, which is the which is mainly a community around teaching around building on Ethereum. So we built different tools for developers to easily build and deploy their applications on Ethereum. And we do this through our tool set called Scaffold ETH. After you complete Scaffold ETH, you have like a set of challenges. So you go to speedrunethereum.com and then you can follow the challenges to like learn to build more complex stuff, such as like making your own, deploying your own counter. Well, counter is not like a very complex one, but you can like go up to like building your own decentralized exchange. So like there are these different tools, like 7 or 8 challenges which you can follow. And over there, we're kind of more focused on education. So I think it was very nice to like have the entry, like start with Developer DAO, learn about communities, and then I feel like I found the community where I can contribute the most. And that's kind of like been my evolution to through online communities and like building in Web3. I'm not sure that answers the questions. Did I miss a few parts? I think I went through a few tangents.
No, no, that's fine. That's fine. No, no, I thought that was great. What's actually, well, to add to that, what's something you would like to see more of? Like, what would, if you had a call to action for people, like, what would be something, maybe getting involved with community, contributing to code, or both? Like, what would be something you would love to see people get involved and help with more?
Yeah, I think it's so there's a lot of things you can do. I feel like what especially would be good to see around communities is like how you can start contributing because I think that's a bit vague for a lot of people and most communities don't really have that path as well, right? Like so for example at Build Guild we're like a small core team and we built all the tools. Like we want to build our community but we don't really have like other aspects for people. Like there are like many people which come in and contribute, but I think it's um like there are some communities like especially DAOs where you try to give like everyone a different job to do. So I feel like that's not clear with some of the communities. If there's like some like how you can get involved is often like a problem which I faced in most of the communities I've been part of. Um, so I think like having a clear path on like how to contribute is important. And also what I see is, yeah, I would say that's one of the main things. But again, like one of the other things which I see is um it's often also not very clear what the communities are doing too. Like, right? I think we spend a lot of time to make sure that our message is clear. Like we redid our website, we put up some blog posts, like went on and talked about this to showcase like what this community is actually doing and how you can start like learning about this and like being part of it. So that's something which we spend a lot of time on thinking, like how can we probably convey what we're doing to people and how can people get involved. I think funding is another problem for most communities. It's often hard to like, um, that's what I've been hearing, especially like to sustain. Like maybe like, so we had like like I'm in Turkey and we had like when you try to like make a community form here, you of course need funding because I think it's good to have that in real life connection. And what I see is most people can get funding for like a single event, right? Like there's a single event, you can get funding for that. But I think having like a constant funding is hard because again, like you don't produce something, so you don't give back money to people who like give money to you in the first place. So I see like funding is one of the main challenges of the communities today, which is the same as in like any other sector as well, but that's kind of one thing which comes to mind.
Yeah, amazing. Actually, on that note, I have a question around some of the you've judged a few hackathons with the amazing ETH Global crew. Speaking of amazing events, and shout out to ETH Global crew. We've yeah done a few things with them this year, and what a fantastic community. And yeah, I was actually in ETH Global Sydney earlier in the year, and yeah, just being able to connect with folks and actually spoilers, my laptop is currently sitting on the ETH Global stand that they had there. So I'm sure everyone that's been to one this year, which is pretty much everyone, has probably got at least one of them. It was a really good stand. But what was the most memorable moment or most memorable project that you had from some judging that you did at you were at the ETH Global? Oh, you went to Tokyo as well and Istanbul. What was some memorable moments from those events?
Yeah, so I was a hacker, I think like 3 times, and then I had the chance
Uh,
to be a judge a few times as well, which has been really nice. I have to say that being a hacker is a lot more fun than being a judge. I do have to admit that.
yeah.
Um, So I think being on both sides, like my most memories are honestly when I was hacking, because it's a truly like interesting experience when you're there for like 48 hours, no idea with like your partner, and then you're like, okay, like what are we going to build? So we usually went with like no ideas, so we would get the ideas there, and that was truly like a very fun experience. And then what I saw afterwards when I become a judge is I finally understood the other side as well, right? Like because I would go there with my project to present it, and I'm like shaking. We haven't stepped for like 36 hours. And then when I became a judge, I'm like, oh, okay, like now I understand why this person is like this or why like half the team is sleeping. It just makes like so much more sense when to me, like over there. And yeah, I guess my like it's a very nice like it gives me like a lot of inspiration when I see like young like people building like different projects and like going there and presenting it. You get a lot of ideas on what's like the technologies they're focusing on right now or what's missing as well. Like I feel like what I saw when I went to the hackathons is that 60 to 70% of people like build around the same stuff. So this can either be like, okay, like these like it gives me a good signal on like what's like also what there's a lot of material on. I feel like it's a good signal to the people like building that stuff. Okay, like you have good material around building with this technology, so like such that 60% of the people that presented their solution build around this technology. I think that was like my main takeaways, like what's kind of missing, what people are building on. There were like some super fun demos, which of course is always nice to see. I think that like people really work hard and it's very nice to like be there and like be encouraging or like answer some questions they have. Uh, and a lot of people like get very creative too. Like you can understand like they just kind of made up like an idea and went with it, which is very nice to see. Um, so overall, like the way I see it is that it gives me like a good signal on like what is being built, what are the loopholes, what people are focusing on right now. And it's just very fun to be there and to kind of see what people are building and make connections and stay in touch. Like I think I met so many of my friends online that it's really interesting. Well, online or like these Ethereum events, and then you stay connected and then see them again, like at a different event, which is very nice to see. Um, but yeah, overall, I'd say like it just um, it's always good to see like what people are building and what's missing in the ecosystem. That's kind of how I see it.
I did actually. I was going to follow that up with a question around how you balance like hacking time as a hacker, like how you balance hacking time versus sleeping time. But I think you've already answered that as well, which is just like, just go, just push through it, just keep going. Um,
So to be fair too, like I think uh, on most hackathons we weren't like going in there to be like, okay, we're going to build this. It was more going in there like thinking, procrastinating for like the first like 1.5 days, and then when we get the idea and like the dinner comes like before the last day, that's when we get to building. So I do think like if we procrastinated less, this would not be the case as well. Like I'm a big fan of sleeping. So even if it's 6 a.m., I would go home and like sleep for 2 hours and then go back. I don't think you should like not sleep. I would sleep. But I do think like once you get the idea and you're building there with your friends and everyone's also there, and then the food comes at like 1 a.m., then you're like, okay, I'll just stay here a bit longer. That does happen. But if you plan better, you can of course sleep. And I think it's good to sleep. It just depends on the idea. Like I feel like we mostly went there to have fun, and if we're having fun, we'll continue. If it doesn't work out, we'll just like not continue and maybe even like um sleep and just go back. I think it's always good to present your idea whether you build something or not. Like it's not necessarily the working part, it's more about the experience and the friends you meet and the connections you make. So yeah, I would for sure sleep, but I am a huge procrastinator in life. So I think that is something to take note.
See, as a fellow procrastinator, I like to think of it as refining what you need to do before you actually go and do it. And that way, when you go do it, it's just like, bang,
Yeah.
it's done. You know, I mean, that's what I've always like playing a game. It's like, oh yeah, I'm thinking through the process. Um, the sleep thing, I think, yeah, that was super handy for anyone, I think, that's ever been to a hackathon or planning to. I once did do the 36 hours no sleeping thing using there's an original Red Bull. It's called Krattendaying L. It's actually pre-Red Bull, and they sold the recipe for Red Bull to Red Bull, and they watered it down, so it's stronger than Red Bull. Anyway, I was drinking those, and I do not recommend that because it is real. They're really bad anyway. It's literally like syrup, and yeah, you can do 30 something hours of hacking on that, but please don't do it. Please don't try that at home. We had a question come in. Oh, actually, I had one more. One more. Um, you said you don't go to the hackathons with ideas, which is really interesting. How do you validate the idea with other people at the hackathon when you've got a direction to go in, or when you think you've got something you wanted to work on? Like, do you then sort of connect with folks and sort of swap ideas, swap notes?
Yeah, I think that's great about a hackathon because especially my first hackathon, we were there and zero idea. It was my first, like, I think I'd been at Web3 for like 4 months at that point, so I didn't even know what you could build. And then we started going to the booths and talking with them and being like, hey, like, what do you think we can build? And then people gave us like so many ideas. So like you just have to go up, you have to ask, and then people definitely give you ideas. Like you can most like projects also have like a hackathon idea list, which you can actually follow for people who have no ideas. Of course, there are like sometimes now, since I've been in the ecosystem longer, there are like some things which I feel can be nice to be built on. So I do go there with like maybe a scope in my mind. Like I want to build something around payments or something around streaming or something around games. So that does make it a bit easier, but it's totally okay to like not have an idea. You go there, you kind of go back and forth. The way I see hackathons is not necessarily like to build a project afterwards, but to like learn about the technology in a very fast way. And then you can build something else that is more refined afterwards. I think it's really around going there, like meeting who is building the technologies, like making connections. I got my jobs from the hackathons. And then You meet the people, you understand what people are working on. So, and instead of like building a full-on product, I would build like something which you can like which is buildable in the amount of time that you have, and then continue afterwards if you want to do so. So that's kind of how I see it. I know some people go there to build a project, which is totally cool and fine. There have been like some very good, like I think 1inch was made at a hackathon, ETH Global Hackathon as well. Um, so there's definitely like some cases like that, but for me, the way I see it is it's to test your ideas. If you're a sponsor, it's to test your product to get direct feedback from users, and then afterwards to capture those users and to like build more products. Because I don't think you can build like a full-on product in 48 hours. You definitely need more time. You could prototype an idea, but what I like to do is it just gives you like it's like, okay, Edda, you are forced to learn about a new technology and to build something which can be fun since like, you're just there like forcing yourself. That's kind of how I see it.
Actually, yeah. On that note, we had the Eat Global Sydney that we're at with Lilypad. We actually had someone build. We had thought that it was possible, but somebody built in as part of their app workflow a level generator using the Lilypad network into their app over the weekend. Which I mean, we theorized, but we hadn't actually tried it yet. So yeah, I think that validation thing is always great, and just to see that people build what people build out, because everyone has so many amazing ideas. Speaking of, we are running out of time, but we did have a question come in from Rodenbreck. Let me bring it up on screen. There we go. Based on my observations, thriving communities often engage in a variety of activities unrelated to product development. They organize games, contests, and other events that help bring people together. Hang on, there's a second part. Switch that one. What are your thoughts on this approach? Hang on, I'll switch back to the other one. There we go.
Yeah,
So you
that's a
can
really
read
good
it.
question. Um, so I think we had a podcast with Austin the other day, and we were talking with Skylar from the DevCon team. And we're building a lot of stuff we have a community-led session at DevCon as Build Guilds. And we're ideating like what to do when you go there and what kind of engagements we can do. And I think it is super important to have the way like we were talking about, going to the conference. And yes, like we're mostly technical people. You want to learn about how to build a tech. But I think the social side is also very important. Uh, like to be there, I was saying as well, like when we work together in real life in person, because we're a remote team, but then when you get together, you just get so much more done. And yes, like part of it is like going to have food together, like you would go to like eat some pizza or something. But then also, like I feel like once you're together, you can brainstorm ideas off each other, and you get a lot more done. And I think it's very cool that you can meet a lot of like-minded people. So especially like having events, like I think that they mentioned, like games or contests or stuff like that. That makes the human connection, right? Like we're not robots in the end. So I think it's important to like, okay, like let's play a game, let's have fun. Like you're going to a conference, you're not going to work 48 hours straight, right? Like you need to eat, you need to have fun. So I think it makes a lot of sense to have that connection. Some like I guess like the other approach would be like some people only prefer to do that and like not most the educational things. So I'm kind of an advocate of like, yes, you need like the education piece, and you need to have like a community around like some sort of product or context or education. And then you should also do those. Like I don't think like it's one choose all. I think they're both needed. And I think that makes the like now when someone from my team messages me, I know their intention, I know what kind of person they're like. It's just uh especially when you're like messaging and like not in real life together, sometimes jokes don't come across. So I can understand if like this is like a joke or not, or if this person is like it's just important to have that in-person connection too, like whether that be with your team or people building. um that's kind of how I see it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and yeah, that is a really good point. Sometimes things are misinterpreted, like that one emoji in a string of text, and you're like, wait, do they mean this or this? Like, yeah, I think that's a really good point. And yeah, that well, particularly with community, that connection's always important, even if it is just it's for that particular event, but still that strengthens your online connection from there on in. Um, we are running out of time. I have a few more questions left, but if anyone does have one, still got a few more minutes, so please drop it into the chat on whichever platform you are watching or listening from. What is your favorite? I asked Dan this the other day, and I didn't expect to get back the response I got. So anyway, no pressure. But what is your favorite developer-centric or tech-centric TV or movie series? Well, actually, movie or
Oh,
TV series is probably the other way around.
movie
Or
or
do you have
TV
one?
series? Computer centered or yes, that
Oh,
was
it
the
doesn't have
question,
to
right?
be tech related or something. I mean, so Dapper Dan's favorite movie was Pirates of Silicon Valley, which I'm still chuffed about because it is literally one of my all-time favorite movies, and it's literally the story of Microsoft and Apple and how they, grew out of garages and from literally nothing to, well, everything. It was just a geeky question. If you don't have one, that's fine too.
No, no, I do. I just thought maybe like, is it like computer related? So I would say my favorite movie is actually like 21. I don't know if you watch it, but I'd
Oh,
highly recommend it. I love like games and strategy. Like it's really around like game theory and psychology. And I'm also just reading like Ender's Game, which I think is kind of similar. So I like to
uh,
center like it's um yeah, I think I watched that movie like 10 times and I would watch it 10 times more. Um and in the end, it teaches like I think it teaches you a lot about like how to play game and like game theory and those applications. So I would definitely recommend 21 to anyone um who has like 1.5 hours or should make 1.5 hours to make watch it.
there you go. For everyone watching along at home, yeah, check out 21. I'm sure it's on a streaming platform, or you're all tech folks. You can find it. It's around. It's around. Um, the last few questions. Any shout outs to community, any groups that you wanted to mention, or any of the shows or content that you wanted to give a shout out to for everyone?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about build guilds. So I would highly recommend like speedonethereum.com, especially if you're a developer, like to head over there and to start building your application. If you're new to Web3, that's great. Like you can definitely learn more. If you've been here for a while but want to build more complex stuff, that's also great. So it's speedonethereum.com, like very easy to follow. It will give you like all the instructions. It's completely free. So no payments, like all you need to have is set up your own wallet and just connect through that. But yeah, no payment needed. And then also, I think that's like a very good place to get started. For those who can make it, I'll also highly recommend it to make it to DevCon. It's going to be in Thailand in November, I believe November 12th to 15th. So if you can make it, I think that's like a really nice place to actually like feel the community. My entrance to the space was through a conference. So I'm a big advocate of conferences as well. But if you can make it, I'd highly suggest that. Um, and yeah, I think those are the two shout outs. And then I have like my first few articles on Hyperlink coming up, so I'd highly suggest those. But this is kind of, yeah, the questions were suited for me to like advertise these other places as well. So thanks,
That's
Steve.
right. No, that's fine. Actually, I think we're going to be at DevCon as well, I'm being told. So I'm pretty sure Ali will. Actually, one thing I did you touched on earlier with hackathons and how you got your job there. That's actually where I met our CEO, Developer Ali. So I met her at a hackathon at near Sydney, a place called Wollongong, many moons ago, and yeah, we stayed in touch ever since. And yeah, anyway, it's all history. So yeah, there you go. Everyone, for those that haven't been to a hackathon yet, totally worth checking out. It's not even just about the competition side of things. It's I mean, you could win that, but also it's the connections you make because you're going to have those connections for, well, life pretty much. They're going to be with you. You're going to make all sorts of friends there and all sorts of opportunities, and you never know what you'll learn or who you'll meet. So there you go. I think that's all we have time for. Any further shout outs, questions, or anything you want? Actually, let's do this again because last time we did this, we ended up with you, and thank you for coming on and being an amazing an amazing well, in the Pondside. Is it a chair or is it a lily pad? Let's go with lily pad. Being in the Pondside lily pad, the hot seat, if you will. But is there anyone you could recommend that would be good to come on here that we could geek out with and sort of learn more about their developer journey or their tech journey?
Yeah, and thank you for having me too. It was very kind of Dan, so thank you to Dan as well. But I highly recommend Austin Griffiths, who I touched upon quite a lot. And he's the founder of Build Guild, so I'm sure like he will
Oh,
talk a lot and geek out around like what Ethereum is great at, why you should like start building on Ethereum. I think he's been like a very big inspiration to me, so that's the one person I'd recommend.
amazing. Thank you. And thank you for your time. Thank you for geeking out with us today. It's been amazing. And yeah, look forward to seeing you around the interwebs.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. Bye bye.
Thank you. For those that how amazing was that? If you want to see the recording for this, if you are watching this in the future, hello from the past, then check out Lilypad YouTube. It'll also be available on lilypad.team/pond2, which I'm sure you're already watching because you would have to click the link. No, I'm quoting a loop in my own logic now. Anyway, thank you all for joining us today. It's been amazing to have you all here. Stay tuned for episode 3. Which we will announce maybe soon. But until then, we have our weekly AMAs, so our Ask Me Anything sessions with, actually, I'm doing the next one with Tao Sheng next week. And then we also have, that's in the APAC time zone, so that it's in AE, what do I mean now? AEST, not AEDT. Anyway, it's in the Southern Hemisphere. And then we also have the Northern Hemisphere version, which is 12 hours different in the week after or every other week. But you can check out our socials to find out more on that. Until then, we'll see you all soon. Thanks all for joining us. Hello, if you've just joined us, we've just finished a second episode of our Pondside Chats with the amazing Ada Tweets. This recording will be available shortly on YouTube. If you, well, this will be available. This live stream will be available on YouTube as a recording very, very soon. Stay tuned for our third episode out soon. Tune into or follow Lilypad on one of our socials and to find out when the next live stream will be out. We also have our bi-weekly AMA happening, well, every week, with the Southern Hemisphere version happening next week, run by me. Hello, my name is Steve Kuchin. And then the week after will be the North American time zone friendly version happening about 12 hours difference, give or take, depending which part of the world you're in. But otherwise, you've just missed the end of our Pondside Chat. So stay tuned for the recording. Check it out on YouTube or I don't think LinkedIn. No, check it out on the Lilypad YouTube. Plus, there's a whole bunch of other video content too that you would be worth checking out, including the first episode with the amazing Dapper Dan. But otherwise, enjoy the tunes, and we'll see you soon.
Drop the bass, feel the surge, jump into the future, it's time to emerge. Lilypad Network, we're here to stay, taking you